As technology evolves and advances, to me, there seems like, unfortunately, the potential inevitability of profound surveillance. And I was wondering if you've given that thought, particularly in
I
relationship
mean, it's
to,
not profound enough.
well, I mean, it is profound right now.
I mean,
Obviously,
look,
it's
remember Winston from 1984. The only place he could go to where he had any sense of privacy was the corner where the surveillance, the all omniscient, ever present surveillance cameras couldn't see him, which meant they knew where he was.
right,
They knew
right.
where he was because they couldn't see him.
The reason I bring this up is because it comes up so often. Um, this application of technology, this mindless application of technology, do you sense that there is a potential inevitability to all that? And it's a very scary.
Potential. It
Yeah,
is extraordinarily scary. History is not kind here. We've had enough examples from the industrial age and the 20th century
yeah,
that raises this specter of what happens when we objectify everything and
yeah.
we deconstruct it. Durkheim called it anomie, social anomie. It's the fragmentation of being. I absolutely resist any and all efforts and any and all technology that is used for the purpose of deconstructing who we are as sovereign human beings. It's that simple.
Right. And at
Look,
this,
they attempted to do that with me on a very, very personal level, to simply break me to the
right.
point where I would just say, "Uncle, give up," and say, "Okay, I'll go to jail." And I said, I will not do that. You realize what it means for me to remain free, but I realize the pressures are enormous. The pressures that they can put on you to break you are extraordinary.
This whole process is unfolding that in its own way, you see the exercise of profound power. Like when Clapper says, I don't mean to be too cute by half, or when he says, I have so much respect for Mr. Wyden, you get the sense that he is totally in control of these processes. And he's very aware that his power is profound, and I just wondering, do you see that
Well,
as well?
obviously, they're not in total control because they couldn't stop Snowden.
True,
They
true,
didn't
true.
stop me, okay, and they didn't stop my colleagues.
Obviously, that's true. I guess,
Right?
I
Because
guess,
we said enough's enough. This is wrong.
yeah,
You're you're breaching the fundamental contract that you have as a government to support and defend the Constitution. Now, does that matter? For some people, the Constitution doesn't matter. They don't care. It doesn't matter that that is a way to govern ourselves. I personally think it was an extraordinary experiment. I don't want to see the experiment go away. But there were no guarantees even then.
true.
So you can argue all day about what's the best way to govern ourselves. Well, we human beings, in terms of history, don't do very well governing ourselves.
Right.
I personally subscribe more closely aligned with the Jeffersonian principle. He was best governed as least governed. It
Hmm.
just makes for a lot better life, not to have someone in your life. The Machiavellian school of power says an awful lot
Hmm.
because it's the cynical way. It's the life. I'm just going to take, grab, extract, control, monitor, and hold people hostage in various ways. And there's ways to do it directly and bluntly. There's ways to do it on a much more sophisticated level. And the problem with the technology of today is I can do it on a much more sophisticated level in a way that for most people it's like, hey, I don't see it.
Right.
That's partly the paradox you have here of privacy.
Where do you see the congressional process of obtaining truth? And where is the process to obtain
Wow.
truth?
Obtaining truth. How do you define
How do
truth?
I define truth? Well, I define truth as an effort to get truth. I mean, the truth, objective truth. We can get into a philosophical discussion, but we probably shouldn't. So ultimately, it's a question of developing, I think, a select Senate committee investigation or two such investigations. And I'm wondering what you think about that.
That'd be nice. People have called for it. It hasn't happened.
My understanding right now is that it would be in some sense in the hands of Harry Reid and John Boehner to put those processes on the calendars of their chambers.
Yes.
Okay, so it is
There's
sort
no
of,
incentive to do so. They're protecting the state.
of course. Okay, so I just wanted
Period.
to,
It's that simple.
right, I just wanted to
Why would
verify.
you want to open up a can of worms and go on? Remember, I've been waiting for 12 plus years to testify before a committee.
Right.
I still haven't gotten the call. And by the way, backdoor channels, many efforts.
Right.
I have myself or Bill Binney or Kirk Wiebe or Ed Loomis or Diane Warwick actually testify for the record in front of a committee. The closest I came was simply being able to submit for the statement for the record to a committee on government contracting, and I was able to articulate, not in front of the committee, but in front of with a statement that was entered into the Congressional record a couple of years ago on Thin Thread and Trailblazer. That's the closest I got. None of us have been in front. Now, that should tell you something.
Which one of those bills do you find to be closest to hitting the target that needs to be hit for the time being?
The freedom. The freedom.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you speak to
the Sensenbrenner, Leahy,
yeah.
right? That probably comes the closest, has the most juice right now. Although there's others that are actually like there's a Holt introduced, but remember, part of the problem is these committees have extraordinary power. They can hold. There's all kinds of procedural maneuvers they can use to keep it within, and then the chair of these committees has incredible power that they were never designed to have. Okay.
You mentioned Rush Holt's proposal, his bill, and
Yeah.
I really see that as just I like that because it's full systems thinking. It's it's big city, So
yes.
So you also have obviously you're aware of it, but you think it's a good approach, potentially.
Well, potentially, because it goes a lot further in terms of to real reform or real rollback.
Right. And then the next question: Why is it the Leahy Sensenbrenner is what's focusing people's attention? Is it because of the content or because it has momentum?
Both.
It
does have content. I mean, it does, and you have what you call centrist Republicans, centrist Democrats who are behind it.
How do you compare it to the Wyden, Udall, etc. bill?
I mean, I'm partial to Wyden and Udall because they've been raising their voices as loyalists who would go right up to the line, but wouldn't pull a Mike Gravel from the well of the Senate under the speech and debate clause and just tell the truth.
I've actually thought about that. Why Wyden hasn't done that?
Because if he did, he'd be booted off the Intel Committee and would not be able to see what the government's doing, at least what they're telling him they're doing, in secret.
Okay, so that's quite a tight little situation.
I understand the choice he fundamentally made. He decided to continue to work within the system over many years, recognizing that he was severely constrained in what he could say because he himself signed a non-disclosure agreement.
Right. I think there's also there is a piece of legislation that's associated with the creation of the Senate. So the Senate Committee, the Senate Intelligence Committee, that has to do with releasing documents. And I read an article that said basically that that Wyden and Udall haven't used that piece of law. The Resolution 400 has this component that allows them to attempt to make classified documents public. And I read an article. I can't recall the article. I think I permalinked it on one of my blogs. They haven't used that option.
You still have to go through because the executive bureaucratically holds such power here.
I see.
You have to go through this formal declass. If the government has formally, you get into this if they formally classified it. It's different if it's derived, but that's another discussion. There's an executive order that governs all that. There's actually a classification scheme. It actually has, in fact, it has science. It's been severely abused, and that's an understatement. Because the tendency has been, we always joked about NSA, just stamp it classified if you're in doubt. That way, there was no doubt.